Hello and welcome everybody to today's broadcast of Parenting Accurately. So glad you joined us. I am very excited about today's show. I have some special guests that we've been talking with just before we started, and today is going to be an amazing discussion around a topic that's really not talked about very much. And the topic is blended families. So I want to thank everybody that's joining and that will join and watch it live. I encourage you to take part in this, leave some comments, feel free to ask some questions, and if we can, we'll get to some of the questions at the end. But definitely, today's going to be an amazing discussion. I'm sure that time's going to go by fast. If there's anybody in your life that you feel could benefit from what we're about to discuss with blended families, tag them, call them, text them, tell them to get on. But also know, though, that this will be available to watch as a replay later on. So I want to thank you guys for being here. Real quick before we get into, before I introduce my guests, I want to thank Preside Management for their sponsorship of the show this week. Preside Management is a farm labor contractor, but they also do payroll services, accounting services. So if you're a business that could use an extra help around the office, with payroll or maybe bookkeeping or anything like that, you definitely want to give these guys a chance. So we thank them for their support. And so hope everybody's had a great week. And I don't want to delay any further. I am very excited to welcome my guest, David and Elizabeth Oschwald. Thank you guys for joining us.
Hello.
Looks like you guys,
thank you so much.
It's already dark over there, I'm guessing.
Yes, it's already dark. We're on the Central Standard Time Zone, so.
Nice. Yeah, still sunny, probably about 70, 75 out here. So not to rub it in. Not to rub it in.
About 30.
I don't think we've seen the sun this week.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. Yeah, it's there's no rain in the forecast over here yet for the next 10 days. But that's typical. Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you guys for taking the time to meet with us. I know that everybody's lives are busy and especially for both of you, it's great to have you guys here.
Thank you.
I know with me and my family, I do have a blended family, and this topic is something that, as I was preparing to enter into a blended family, there was nobody around that I can really go to, not many that had a lot of experience on the subject. And, I thought I was crazy. So whenever, cause I have 6 kids.
Really?
Yeah, I have 6 kids, and I was blown away when I met you guys and found that you guys have 7. So it's like you guys are crazier than I am.
Our house is definitely crazy.
And my stomach's growling, and she's like,
your stomach's growling.
So,
Did you not eat today?
She's like, your stomach's growling. I can't help it.
So loud. It's so loud.
I didn't hear it, but that's funny.
I didn't hear it.
She probably felt it before she heard it, right?
I did. Almost. It sounded like thunder. I'm like, I don't know how he didn't hear it or feel it.
It's not raining outside. It's just my stomach. That's what it is.
It's still doing it.
It's not an earthquake. It's just my stomach.
That's great. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, anyway.
So take a minute and tell everybody a little bit about yourselves. And, 7 kids, that's, pretty common maybe 100 years ago.
Yeah,
yeah.
We're the only one. Well, actually, we know one other family that's a blended family with 7 kids.
Wow.
But that's it. So you want to tell a little about our story and how we came together?
I'll start. I know I'll miss some things, but
it's okay.
Yeah. So we actually met on Christian Mingle. So that's where it began for us,
right? I love the authenticity here. This is great.
Yeah, this is just raw. So.
We're a bundle of fun, if you can't tell.
That's great.
We're one of the success stories off of online dating.
All right.
Which
you just gave many people hope.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody that looks on there is hoping for that one match, right? I found one. Yep. So.
Oh man.
Yeah.
What I meant was share a little about not how we met, but our, your kids, my kids, how we came together. That.
All right. So I had 4 kids previously. Elizabeth had 2, and then we met on Christian Mingle.
We have to like get something for those guys.
We introduced the kids, and it's been great ever since, and absolutely no problems ever. It's just perfect.
Right, because of Christian Mingle.
Because of Christian Mingle.
Right.
Okay, maybe I should tell the story. Okay. So we did meet on Christian Mingle, but when we met, as he said, he had 4 kids. He had a daughter who was 14, 3 sons who are 11, 7, and 4. I had, 3, 11, 7, and 3. I had 2 daughters, and my daughters were 7 and 4. And really, when we met, his divorce was pretty recent. Mine had been a few years previous. So I'd been single for quite a while. I think one of the unique things about when we met was the way that we introduced our families to each other. I think we really set ourselves up for success from the beginning by how we introduced everyone together. But really, even before that, going into the background of kind of his story, my story, he, for most of his life, although he was raised in the church and in a Christian home, most of his life he was not pursuing a relationship with God, and that was something that was very central to who I was. At the time we met, it was becoming more central to who he was, but he was newer in that journey. So a big part of us coming together and creating a family together was our faith. And when we first started introducing each other to each other's kids and the kids to each other, we staggered it a lot, and we really made it a priority to make it as easy on them as possible. It would have been, we were so quickly kind of enamored with each other that it would have been really comfortable for us to just be like, let's just do this thing and move in next week and get married, and that's it. I mean, I was, at least for me. But you can't do that when you have children. And so a big part of our journey was making the transition as comfortable for them as possible, showing them respect and honor, because this whole thing was happening outside of their control, outside of their wishes. Most kids don't want their parents to ever get divorced. And then when they do get divorced, introducing another parent into the picture is really challenging and hard. Yeah. And so we really wanted to, from a place of just loving the kids and wanting to make it go as well as possible, Dave really led well with that. How to, do you want to share how you did that?
Yeah,
I think it's important.
I'd like to point out that every situation is unique to itself. What worked for us isn't a one-size-fits-all. Just so happens that it worked for us. I had a 14-year-old daughter, like Liz said at the time, and that's a rough time for a young girl to watch her everything she knew, get torn in half. The cool thing was Elizabeth was at the time or in a previous time, a counselor for young girls at Teen Challenge. So my goal became evident real early. Let Olivia and Elizabeth meet first. Yeah. And as Olivia was the oldest of my children, I gave her permission to accept or deny or somewhat control when the boys got to meet Elizabeth, if she liked her. She just happened to tell me that she loved her after the first time they kind of hung out. So it worked well. A
little bit of pressure for me because I knew what was at stake.
Yeah. So, you guys have like the speed. I think this is important and so valuable and really important to talk about. you know, you have the speed of the relationship between the two of you, but
Right.
then you have the speed of the relationship between you guys and all of the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the speed of the relationship between the kids.
Right.
And all three of those are super important. Of course, you know, you guys had that set, no big deal. But then the speed of the relationship between you and the kids, and then the kids and each other, all of those things have to synchronize and be and kind of meld together. So what I'm hearing you guys say is that preparation of a blended family is super important. And the steps leading up to that, you know, and then of course, then once, you know, you guys get married and you move in, I'm sure that that's a whole nother dynamic, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
Can you
Even
speak?
after-
Can you
ahead.
speak to the you know, being prepared for this? It's a hard road. I mean, I have a blended family, and I know several other families that do, and it's a hard road. You know, I'm thankful that, you know, if you have love and if you have grace and you have patience, it can work. But it's a road that is easy, like you were mentioning earlier. That, you know, you have the kids, especially a teenage girl whose life literally just ripped in two. You know, you have the half of mom, half of dad. You know, how do you manage that? And so there's a lot of roles and a lot of pieces to be played. So you just take a few minutes and speak to that.
Yeah. One of the things I think that worked really well in our favor, and this is something that I work with and coach a lot of single moms, and something that I stress to them highly is you can't over invest in the season ahead. And what I mean by that is having your house in order before you try to blend it with another house is super, super important. And we both came into this with kids who were respectful and obedient and pretty well behaved. So there wasn't anyone coming in the gate with tantrums and craziness. And, you know, our parenting styles were pretty similar. We expected similar things. And so there was just this, my kids respected me, his kids respected him. There was pretty well. So that laid a good foundation, and there was already order in my home. There was already order in his home, and he had done the preliminary work, building a foundation with that. And so had I. And when I went into my single mom season, that was not the case. Actually, my girls didn't listen at all, and they kind of walked all over me. And that took some strong mentors in my life, addressing that in a loving way and giving me tools that had not been made available to me prior, you know, in the home I grew up in. And so I think that was a big part of what gave us success, is that we already kind of had this heart connection, and this, they knew the expectations of respect and listening. And then there was, you know, a trust level. My girls knew I wasn't going to bring someone, just anyone, into their lives. And I think that his kids probably knew the same.
Right.
But the staggering, do you want to talk about that and how that went?
Staggering of introducing.
So I met Olivia, and then he met my daughters. And then when Olivia felt like it was a good time and was comfortable, which wasn't long after I met her, then I met all the other three boys. And then we waited a little while longer before we let all the kids meet each other. And they had, I think, maybe talked on FaceTime, and they had seen pictures. And there was, you know, in the midst of this, he would come and spend time with me and the girls. I would come and spend time with him and his children. But we didn't let them be around each other for a little bit longer. So by the time that we allowed that, they were like chomping at the bit. They couldn't wait.
Yeah, it was almost like a buildup. I don't know that we intentionally were looking for a buildup, but we were intentional about timing it correctly. And by the time it happened, yeah, they were waiting. They were like, I want to meet these kids.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So for the single people out there that are, looking and thinking, well, looking ahead to the time where they might meet somebody in an attempt to blend their family. There's preparation that they can do now, with their kids. And, like you mentioned earlier, make sure that they are respectful, that they already understand some foundational things that will make that later process a lot easier.
Yeah. One of the things I understood when I first met Dave, and he has a military background, he was in the Marines, and just super, his kids were very obedient and very honoring of him. And I knew early on, if I would have come into the picture, as much as he may have liked me, if he would have met my kids and they would have been like a train wreck, if they would have been just completely dishonoring to me, if they would have been, throwing fits all the time, or refusing to obey, or whatever, if there were major behavior problems, I think that in good conscience, he would not have been able to allow that to into his home where there was already a foundation laid. And that is something that I wasn't even thinking about until I met him. And then I was like, I am glad I've done the work, and that I don't have to worry about if we show up at his house for dinner, I'm going to have a kid throwing food or under the table screaming or refusing to do whatever we ask. So, I mean, you could probably agree. If I would, as much as you like a person, if it's not a good fit with your kids, and if the kids might disrupt the culture in your home, it might be a deal breaker.
Yeah.
I think there's two ways of looking at that. One, there's times where you can introduce one style to the other in this is what a calm, well-mannered, respectful house can look like, and we're going to learn off of this pattern. But you can also bring it in, and the well-mannered kids can be like, wow, why did they get away with that but I don't?
Right.
So there's a balance in there, that it's not an unnavigatable process. It's just one to consider before you walk forward.
Yeah, there certainly has to be a synergy,
right?
Like between all and alignment for things to be as smooth as possible. I mean, and I don't think there's any easy way to do a blended family. There's no easy way to make that happen. And there's also the other spouse, depending on what's going on there, and that other family can have a big impact on the attempt to blend a family. And so the more that you can prepare ahead of time, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For sure.
Wow.
One thing that came up when I met Elizabeth's daughters was she asked if I promised not to ever hurt them. And, she was meaning by, I don't want to introduce you and then have you leave. And my response was, I can't promise that. As much as I wanted everything to work out, I couldn't promise that everything was going to work out, because there was a lot of stuff getting ready to happen with the introductions of family and the blending. At any given time, if there was a harm for her girls to join this relationship, then she needed to pull back, and I needed to look at that the same way. Like, at this point, the kids are the priority until we decide that we become the priority, and we become, the union and the covenant happens. The kids are the primary.
Yeah, and it requires a lot of patience between you guys, and between the two people that are together. You guys know the love that you have. You're ready. Like you said, you were ready. I mean, if there were no kids involved, you'd be married the next week. Right. But because there are, it might be next year, or 2 years, depending on
we waited a year.
How everything goes, and that requires a lot of patience. And I know for me, I went through that, and we were ready. And, we still had that. We were like, okay, kids, hurry up. We're way ahead of you. And they're like, come on, like, this is great. Hurry up. And they're like, hold on. Like, it's all a shock to them. And, I realized now, I did put a lot of pressure on my kids I kind of like forced the growth together and forced things together, kind of like I feel I just see like putting a cheese through a cheese grater, it's like, come on, like hurry up. And, and there's friction when you do that. And then things don't happen naturally. And I know from my experience that creates more work for me, and, heartache and hurt for my kids. And so, there's no amount of patience and time. It's super important just to put the kids first.
Yeah.
Because if they can meld together naturally, then less stress for you, less stress on their marriage, and I think then your relationship is now can be an example to the kids.
Yeah.
And there's so many elements to this, and so many elements, and there's no easy way to get through this.
Yeah.
But what are some of the things that did help you guys? So a lot of preparation. You guys it sounds like you were patient, and you let the kids, kind of go at their pace. I think that's one of the foundational keys in the preparation part. Once you guys did get married, and what was that like? What are some of the things that?
Well, a quick one, as smooth as a transition it wasn't perfect. When we got married, it caused a ripple because that was a definite. There was a definite line drawn, like everything has changed now, and it wasn't like oh my goodness, it's bad. It's just for kids and their emotions. That is now, Dad's getting married,
right?
And she's going to live in our house, and she's moving her stuff in here, and that as good as everything was relationship wise, that was still a hurdle we had to cross.
And for my girls, leaving the town where we lived and the home that they had known and their friends at school, we homeschooled, but they had friends at a homeschool community that we went to. So there was still a lot of transition and moving away from my parents. All of that was, it wasn't easy for any of us. I moved into the home that he had shared with his ex-wife. We actually live in the house that his parents built and he grew up in.
Wow.
But 10, 15 years ago, he and his ex-wife moved in here and remodeled and made this their home. So I'm coming into a place that he had shared with another woman, and that was really hard. And then I'm thinking, what are the boundaries with moving pictures on the wall? Is that going to upset the kids if I start painting and changing things that their mom had done? And just all of those little, what's my place? Where do I fit? I was telling you a little bit earlier, we had things like his youngest was 3, and he would hear my girls call me mom, and naturally he started to want to call me mom. And we had his actual mom saying, no, you only have one mom. I don't want you to call her mom. And when he's calling me mom, I don't want to say, no, you can't call me that. So just all kinds of hurdles that we can't please everyone.
But we found an awesome solution to that. We were at a conference on our honeymoon. We ran into a young lady who was from Egypt, right? And we asked her, what would Jesus have called his mom? And she said, Jesus would have called his mom Ema. So we, instead of saying mom in this house, almost everybody that comes in are kids' friends. There's probably about a good dozen to 15 something people that call Elizabeth Ema. And they're calling her mom, but it's not offensive to the biological mom. Actually, she sent home a picture that our 4-year-old had done, and it said, I love Ema. And she said, oh, he's got a girlfriend. And we kind of chuckled because it was
right.
But the feelings got hurt. And so we're we don't ever try to ruffle those waters. They get ruffled sometimes, but it's not our intentions.
Right.
So.
Wow. That's good.
Yeah.
So then you guys get through the initial transition, and of course that's hard for everybody. What would you say what was like the next hurdle that you guys overcame?
I would say it was probably the first time you had to put your foot down.
Mm.
And we're going to talk. I hope you caught on that we say our kids.
Yes.
There's times that we have to go specific, like her kids, my kids. The
Right.
first time I had to discipline one of her kids, and it wasn't a discipline, but they were talking back to her, and I got stern with her and I said, "You don't talk to my wife that way."
Right.
So I let her know that the boundary was not between her and I. It was the issue was between the way she was talking to my wife.
Yeah.
And I got a little stern, but I mean, it didn't have to be physical. It just had to be like, "Hey, I'm not going to tolerate it because that's my wife."
Right.
And that was probably the first time that had to happen. Was like, okay, we got over that, and we got over it and smooth, and things were fine. But I think that's where some parents can ruin some stuff very quickly.
We had to give each other room and grace to step into that role with each other's kids. And it's never an easy thing that, okay, I went from dad's girlfriend and I'm fun and almost like a big sister almost. Like when I come over, I bring fun stuff to do and we play, to now I'm this authority. One thing that helped us in that regard was just having a really transparent conversation. And I think that you said it just point blank, like up until now, you guys, we put you first because as parents that were not married, that was our role, but we just made a covenant with God and now we are one and our marriage comes first. Yeah. And so we will always stand united. We will always have each other's back. In this house, we are both the authority. So, you know, to you, if dad's, you know, if he's gone, I'm the authority. If I'm gone, he's the authority. And it doesn't matter who gave birth to you. We are both the head of this house now, and we are both. So I think that helped. And then we also, if there was ever any kind of discrepancy between like my kids and him or his kids and me, 100% had each other's back. There was never any, when I've talked to blended families, one of the main sources of pain is when there's conflict between, let's say, me and his kids, and he sides with his kids, and I feel, you know, like I don't have his support. That's never, I can't think of a time that that's ever happened with us. And I think that causes a lot of wounds inside a marriage that then make it hard to have a really strong foundation in the home. So that's a really huge hurdle that we've kind of been able to avoid really by his leadership, of just saying from the beginning, like, I have her back and I'm always going to believe her and she's right. Right. Now, if there's something that we have a discussion behind closed doors and then there's like, okay, maybe I wasn't right, we need to go have a conversation and make things right. That's happened. But as far as like, if there's any kind of disagreement, the default is always we side with each other. Yeah.
And I think that goes over to the kids a lot easier because you guys have already referred to them as our kids, and they know that, you know, so they've seen for a while that, hey, we're all one, we're one family. I know in my life, you know, blending my family together, we took the same stance. You know, I referred to them whenever we go out and I introduce them. It's like, hey, these are my kids. Yep. And I think that was really important, and that showed a lot of value to them, that I wasn't just the one at home disciplining them or, you know, helping them with their homework, but I was also proud of them no matter where we went. Yeah. And, you know, I refer to them as my kids. Not, oh, this is my stepkid. Right. Or my stepson or my stepdaughter. This is mine. There was one specific time in talking about, you know, looking after your marriage and looking after your relationship, I had to, you know, set that boundary. You know, if a boundary is not set, the kids don't know where the fence line is. They don't know, okay, I can go up to this point, but I can't cross it. And when we were dating, in several months into our dating season, and, you know, I knew that my first objective, you know, was after I won my wife was the kids. And I knew that I had to take the time to invest in them. And she used to work every Saturday, and I had I had the weekends off, and every other weekend my kids were with their mom. So that weekend, that Saturday, I was alone, and they were alone at home. So I would often go over there and just spend the day with them, or take them up, go to lunch, and just take them out and do different things. Mm-hmm. And I saw some behavioral issues that I wanted to address. I don't like to see kids disrespect their parents. I mean, even if they're not mine, I'm like, I want to, go over there and slap somebody. But I knew that I couldn't do that, and I didn't say a word. But after a season, I knew the kids loved me. I'd built that relationship with them, outside of my relationship with my wife. I had my own relationship with them to where I even thought, man, if for some reason things didn't work out, I would still want to know these kids. I'd still want to spend time with them. I'd still want to check in on them. And, there was a season when they were acting up and going through, single mom for a couple of years and, working, and there's a lot to manage. And I'd seen that all of them, to some degree, took advantage of that. And one of the days we got back we were out, I don't remember what we were doing, but pulled up into her driveway, and she was home, and I stopped the car, and I turned around, and I looked at all three of them in the back seat. And I told them, I said, you guys know that I love your mom. Yeah. You guys know that I love you. Yeah. I said, well, I promised your mom that I would always love her and that I would protect her. And I said, and that means that I'm going to protect her even from you. And they looked at me like, what are you talking about? I was like, I've seen your mom get upset and cry because you guys are hurting her.
Yeah.
When you act this way, when you don't do this, or when you disrespect her, it hurts her feelings. Mm-hmm. She doesn't always show you that, but it hurts her, and I know that. I said, and I'm not going to let you do that anymore. I said, I love her, and I don't want her to be hurt. So I said, so I need your guys' help. And then, from that point on, I started to be a little bit more vocal and say, hey, you remember what I told you guys? This is what I'm talking about. And I use that as like a point to refer back to, to say like, look, this isn't going to work. And
the kids will honor that clarity.
Yeah.
This is already a confusing time for them.
Right.
They're desiring clarity. And when you provide that, like, hey, that's my wife. You're not going to talk to her like that. They're like, okay.
Yeah.
They're actually hungry for that, because
I believe that they are.
When they make their own rules, we get things like the Lord of the Flies. When the kids are on the island, all of a sudden it just gets crazy.
Right.
And they need some defining.
They especially, I think kids want to be corrected. Yeah. They want those boundaries, but otherwise they're just a roaming around everywhere with nowhere to go. And when you start setting that boundary, it lets them know, I have a place of belonging. I belong here. And if it's open, I think that the kids lose that sense of belonging. And when they're going through, it's like, okay, well, do I belong with my mom or do I belong with her dad? They need that even more.
Yeah.
One thing I did for Elizabeth, the kids would ask me to do things, and I would have them ask her. Mm-hmm. So I was already okay with it. She would text or whatever and be like, what do you think? I said, yeah, I'm fine with it. But I would have them go to her for answers.
Yeah.
On permission. Can I spend the night somewhere? Check with email. And that was usually like, I'm okay with it, but I want her to give some authority. She built that up with them.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah. We still do that. And I hadn't even thought about that being a big deal. But I think it is. We make decisions
together.
Unified. Right.
Yeah.
And it shows something to the kids when you direct them across, the relational line, and it's like, okay, well, we are one. We were talking before the show started that, when both of us, I did the same thing. It's like, look, I told the kids, I'm not going to ever try to replace your dad. That's impossible. Mm-hmm. Why would I do that? He's your dad. I respect him. I want, he needs to be in your life. At that time, he wasn't. But I told him, like, even though I'll never try to replace him. Mm-hmm. And I think by also letting him know, like, look, I'm not going to try. There's no, you don't have to. I think whenever a parent tries to replace the other spouse, it puts them in a position where they have to make a decision that's not fair.
Yes.
You know, and depending on the household, depending on the experience, maybe the other spouse is crazy, or maybe the other spouse is, less than perfect, which we all are, but a little bit more of an extreme case, and where that I could definitely do a better job than this other person. You still refrain from putting yourself into a place that's higher than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the night that we crossed that boundary with Elizabeth's daughters. I gave them permission to love their dad inside of this house.
Yes,
so
that's powerful.
Don't hold back because of me. I give you permission. You don't have to hide it. I'm okay with it. He's your dad. You should love him.
Yes.
And sometimes kids need that. They need permission to be themselves inside of somebody else's quote unquote house that they just moved into.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
They need permission to love freely. And we don't.
There's like an underlying competition.
Right.
I've seen it with my own kids,
yeah.
especially my wife's son. And for a while, I would see he went through a phase where he was always talking about his dad, and his dad really wasn't very active in his life. And I was encouraging him. I was like, I would just comment and just bring things up to where I didn't want him to feel like he couldn't talk about his dad.
Yeah.
I didn't want him to feel like he couldn't express that he missed his dad. And so, I would encourage him to do that. Now, thankfully, they're spending a lot more time together. And I noticed for a season, though, he would always talk about his dad. And if I were to do something, or he would compare, internally just compared us.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not use that as an opportunity to say, oh, well, and try to one up him.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what, that's really good. I'm really glad that he took you here to this place. He needs to spend time with you. That's awesome. He's your dad. I'd say things like that. And, honestly, first instinct was like, well, I've done a lot more for you, or I've done this. I was like, but I had to I never went that route.
That's so good.
Yeah, that's important. But
I've had to swallow. My ex is remarried, and they call him Dad'em, and I've had to swallow that. That's okay. I'm glad you love him.
His name's Adam.
Yeah, it could be so much worse, as he was not respectful to you, but he is.
Right.
So, man, that's a win.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's one dynamic to encourage the others, your spouse's kids to have permission to love their parents. I think that's that's life-changing. That's really important. Every person needs to get to that point. If they're not at that point, you shouldn't get married. Again,
I agree.
Really, you shouldn't. That's not fair to the kids.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting, and maybe not as easy, when your own kid goes to the spouse, or to your ex, and then their husband or wife, whichever way it goes, starts to show affection or excitement about their relationship with their new stepdad or stepmom.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I first heard my son talk about his stepdad, and he referred to him as dad, and at first I was like, ouch.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a lot different than I am.
Yeah.
And I had to respect that and humble myself, really, to not make him choose.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I would think that his first choice, and I would want his first choice to be me, right? But still, that I think that's just where we are. That's where we become with the blended family. If we have a blended family, we have to make that choice early on that there is going to be another person that is going to influence your kids, hopefully in the right ways.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that some are listening and watching, and maybe the other spouse is remarried, and maybe it's not the best, or maybe you really literally can do a better job, and you still need to walk in grace. You still need to think about your kids, be the example, and think about them, and not put them in a place where they have to feel like they can't be themselves around you and express love towards the other half.
Right.
That's really powerful.
Yeah. And I think, one thing that's really important for us is our home being a place that feels safe to all our
Yes.
kids, a place where they feel safe they're free to be, to feel, to express, however, whenever, whatever, within reason. Um, as far as the expression goes.
Respectfully.
Yes. But I had a conversation similar to what you'd had with Olivia, that actually the first night that we met, and I said, I just want you to know, no matter where this goes, we don't know the future yet, but I will never try to replace your mom. And at that time, her relationship with her mom was a little bit rocky. And I could have easily capitalized on, here's this vulnerable 14-year-old girl who's just like putty in my hand. She just loved me. She truly did. From the first night we met, loved me. When I took her home and dropped her off at her house that night, she ran in the house and said, Dad, I love her. She had already told me at the mall, I love you. And she meant it. And her sweet little innocent, God knew just what she needed in that time. And I had, like he said, a history of working with teenage girls. And so it was exciting for me to meet her and be able to pour into her and love on her. But when she would come to me and complain about her mom or share things that were upsetting or hurtful, I had a choice. And I could have either jumped on that bandwagon and been like, oh my goodness, that's horrible, I can't believe. Or what I chose to do was, your mom might be just going through a hard time right now, and it sounds like this might be out of character. And we should pray for her. We should encourage her. Don't judge because you don't know the whole story. All those things. Like, even though I didn't have any relationship with her mom yet, I tried to play I'm on her side as much as possible so that I was a safe place. Because as soon as, this is what I've seen a lot of parents do, as soon as you start to agree with them, then they're like, wait a minute, that's my mom. It's okay for me to say that, but you can't say that. Right. And then a little wall of defensiveness starts to come up. And so I've just from the very beginning tried to be that safe place where she knows she can tell me anything, because no matter what she says, I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to hold it against. I'm not going to use it to manipulate. And I'm truly going to come from a place of, I want you to have a thriving relationship with your mom.
Right.
And there's no either or, it can be both and I want you to have a thriving relationship with me. And you're going to trust me more if you see that I'm on her side too. And she's now 19, and she literally introduces me to people as her best friend. This is my bonus mom, and she's also my best friend. And when we go to teacher conferences at school, when I meet friends that she works with, they say, oh my goodness, she talks about you all the time. She tells us you're her best friend. So I know she's not just saying it to make me feel good. She actually talks about, and that happened because I was willing, against, like you said, you kind of have that, well, it'd be really easy just to become the favorite and capitalize on her moment of really just wanting me.
Right.
But what's been great is over time, her relationship with her mom has gotten closer again, and it's restored. And she truly does have a good relationship with both of us. So that's a win for her.
Kids are smart. Kids are very attentive. They're like sponges. They absorb everything. And I think that even if, they know the truth, they recognize when you're being genuine. They recognize when you're not. So I think it's, like you said, it's just best to have that open communication with them and let them be free to express however they feel, even if we may not like it, and don't shut them down.
Yeah.
Have that space open, as long as it's done in a respectful way. Mm-hmm. And they might have to fail a couple times to learn how to do that, especially if they're upset or hurt, and that's really good. That's really good. I know in my story with the kids, when we first moved in, one of the first things that I had to sit down with everybody and again just reiterate, okay, we're now taking two cultures. In my case, two cultures. I mean, every family has their own culture, their own traditions, but in this case, it was a Hispanic culture. Though my kid's mom was also Hispanic, they weren't so Hispanic, and we had time to create our own, which is more Americanized. I don't know Spanish, and so there was a lot more Spanish going on in the house. There was a lot more, just different things that they brought, and we had to somehow figure out, okay, how do we create another home?
Yeah.
Because that's really what this is. It's one family. It's not two families living under one roof, and it's one.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not take enough time, I don't think, to really blend everything together well before we ended up doing that. So it was an advanced process, which created a lot of pain. It created a lot of heartache, a lot more confusion, and certainly regret doing that with my kids. But I'm also thankful for where we are now. Things have gotten a lot better. But I remember certain times, Christmas being a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Christmas was tough in the beginning because I had our way of doing things, and then a completely different way of doing things, and some things were the same, thank God, but some things were different. Mm-hmm. And I had to make sure that my kids didn't disconnect too much, and they felt like home. It's Christmas time, and holidays are real. It's a tender moment.
Yeah.
It's usually it's some of the places in life where we'll go back and we'll remember the most.
Yeah.
I remember this Christmas or that Thanksgiving. And so keep in mind, just as we put the kids in the beginning of the relationship, as we're building them, we're winning them, it's still like an ongoing process.
Yeah.
Yep. Time is just about over. It's going by so fast.
It has gone by fast.
We have a few minutes left before we'll close this. Any last thoughts or comments about, just if anybody's out there and they're either working through, they've already started to blend a family, they're already married and gone, already working on this, and they're just having trouble. What would you be able to offer and speak to them?
I would say we may make it look easy, but it's not. It's hard.
Yeah.
And if you're in a hard spot, there's nothing about this that is really easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You may look back and go, "Oh, that wasn't so bad," but in the moment, it's like, "Man, this is not fun." But it's not fun for the kids either.
Yeah.
They're in the middle. They didn't choose this.
Right.
And neither one of us want to advocate a divorce. We would both say that if you can work it out. Because just because you're divorced, that problem, that disagreement, that conflict of personality that you have with your ex doesn't go away. Actually, it gets worse. Yep. Because now there's more people involved in the process of decision making and holidays and attitudes and cultures in different homes that your kids are bouncing back and forth through.
Yeah.
So it's all hard. If you're feeling like this is impossibly hard, that's because it is.
Right.
But we'll get through it.
Yeah.
I would say I love what you were talking about with building relationship equity early on before you have any expectations of the kids. And so coming from the lens of they did not choose this, they did not ask for this, and yet they're in this position, have so much grace for them not necessarily being on board at first, have so much grace for them being a little resistant or a little, in humility, it's actually impossible to be offended.
Yeah.
And so as we try to go low and just lead with love, pursue this person you love's kids with just a pure heart and out of a place of just genuine, humble love, without expecting anything in return at first. So you might feel rejected. You might feel like I'm giving and giving and giving and they're not giving me anything back. You might feel like I'm planting all these seeds and I'm going out of my way and they're still just cold or abrasive or standoffish. I think you just have to be willing to go through that process because these kids are in this really crazy situation where a parent is being introduced to them that wasn't there from the beginning.
Right.
And it's, we were talking about before we started with biological parents, there's this bond that is almost unbreakable, that no
Yes.
matter how much they have to endure at the hands of a biological parent, whether it's abuse or neglect or just complete mistreatment, there's still this loyalty and this bond that cannot be broken. Even if a child is adopted and never met his biological parents, there's still this like yearning and this loyalty, that there's this attachment. With a step parent, you don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
You actually have to earn it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that going into it from that standpoint of, I'm not entitled to your love. This is a situation you didn't ask for. I'm willing to earn your love and your trust. And I'm willing to work my way into your heart, and I'll do it for as long as it takes. And that doesn't mean that that you become a doormat and they walk all over you. But that means that you're willing to do what it takes to learn, what does love look like to this child? When I met David, he had a son, Mason, at the time. He's 16 now. He was 11. And I truly did not know what to do with an 11-year-old boy. The younger ones, it was easy because we could just wrestle and cuddle and color and do crafts. An 11-year-old boy, I was kind of clueless. And he's really quiet and very introverted. And I remember just feeling lost. Like, how do I create this bond with him? I'm bonding really well with the other three. I don't know what to do. And for a minute, I just kind of, I don't want to say I checked out, but I just got kind of quiet because I didn't know what to do. And I really learned from that, you can't do that. You have to pursue, even when it's uncomfortable. So what that looked like was asking his dad, what does Mason like to do? What can I, he seems to come alive a little more when he's talking about football. So maybe I should pick him up from football practice and we can talk on the way home about what plays he's learning and what position he's in. And sometimes I would take him out to dinner, just he and I. And I poured into this relationship that really, truly felt awkward at first. I didn't know if he liked me. He was really quiet. It was me talking 90%, him talking 10. But now at 16, I'll just tell you what happened this morning. They lost their great-grandma on their mom's side of the family. She passed away last night. And they came home here early this morning after being at the hospital all night. Wow. And Olivia and Mason are now 19 and 16. When they got here, he was up getting ready for work. I was actually still in bed. And he said to Olivia, why don't you just go climb in bed with Ema? And she did. Mason went downstairs by himself. He said, maybe you should just take a shower and clean up. He came out and he said he was down there by himself. And he said, why don't you go up there and get in bed with them too? And at 16 years old and 19 years old, they both came and cuddled in bed with me this morning. And we just talked. We laid in the dark, we held hands, and we talked about what they'd been through and how their night was. And that's not something that happens automatically. That's something that happens because for the last few years, I've been praying and saying, what does love look like to them and how can I show that? Because I definitely am not entitled to it.
And I think that one thing that we mentioned earlier, you've given them a sense of belonging. Mm-hmm. They know they belong. They're a part of your family. Yeah. And I think that's crucial. And you do that by investing in what you've done. Yeah. That's awesome. Very true. I know that we'll take a couple minutes. I know that you are a busy woman. You're doing many things. I know that you have some other works that you're putting your time and energy into in the area of helping single moms, I believe. Mm-hmm. Take a minute and share with everybody about that.
Okay. So my season of single motherhood was my unraveling, my breaking, my building it on a new foundation, and really setting me up to have the life I always wanted but didn't think I ever deserved. So, my first marriage, I settled, I ignored red flags. I ended up with 2 amazing daughters, but there was a lot that I went into because I ignored things that I shouldn't have ignored. And so my passion really is taking single moms who are in that same position of, this is not what I wanted for my life. This is not what I pictured. Even though I maybe entered a marriage that I knew wasn't the very best choice, you never get married thinking you're going to get divorced. No one does. Right. And so what do you do when you find yourself in this position of I want to rebuild my life, but I feel completely lost. And really you feel pretty alone. For me in that season, a lot of my friends were married and happy, and I just felt very lonely. So one thing that I'm passionate about is giving single moms a place where they feel like they're part of a family. So I've created an online community for single moms where they can just show up and be loved, and everyone gets you because we're all in the same season or have been in the same season. Right. Some are, in the process of coming into the group, they get married, but they still kind of stay in, as I do, to encourage and give hope. And then from that Facebook group, I went a step further and said, there's some that want to go deeper, who really want to be held by the hand and mentored and invest in themselves in a very meaningful way. And so I created a course and a membership community that's really for the single moms who are like, I really want to stop making excuses and stop hiding behind the pain of the past and invest and go all in on living my best life now. And so it's called the Single Not Alone Collective. And basically that I just started it a couple months ago. And
oh, wow. That's
it's
awesome.
A family of single moms, and we meet regularly. I pour into them. I'm available to them, and I walk them through the season of, it feels like it's a season of transition, and it is in some ways. But I tell them this isn't about finding the one. This is about becoming the one. And so walking them through the process of becoming the woman God has designed you to be, so that when the right man comes along, you're ready.
Right. And so for all the single parents that might be watching out there, single moms, we talked, the more preparation that you can go through, if you hope to be remarried again, you're going to have to blend a family. One of the hardest things you're ever going to do in your life. So the more preparation you can get, the better. So I encourage everybody to get in touch with you. I know that you have a website and you have a Facebook page. We'll want to share that. We'll put that into the comments.
Sure.
And take advantage of that, ladies. Take advantage. Go deeper, clean, do whatever you can do to become the right person so that you're ready, your kids are ready, so that when that person comes along that sweeps you off your feet, you're ready to go. You don't have to say, oh, wait, I really need, let me fix my kids first. Let me take care of these things first. You'll be ready to go. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's a great work. So where can they find you?
Yeah, so my website is called thejoyfulmama.com. MAMA is how I spell mama. And you can find me on Facebook. I have a public profile page that's Elizabeth C. Oschwald. You can connect with me there on Messenger. And then the Single Not Alone group is, you can easily find that from just my Facebook profile, my not my business profile, but my regular one. It's easily found and featured on my profile, the free group. And from there, there's a link to the paid community. So, but all of the information is also on thejoyfulmama.com.
Right. Awesome. And then we'll put that in the comments as well, so everybody can refer back to there and get the links. That way you can find it easily. So one last question for you guys before we go. What does it mean to parent accurately?
Give yourself permission to make mistakes.
Yeah.
If you're accurately doing them, then you can't lie that you're not going to do it perfectly.
Yeah.
So give yourself permission. Forgive yourself for mistakes and own those. I've had to go to every one of our kids and say, I'm sorry for the way I talked to you, the way I acted, for reacting, for not listening to your side of the story. Give yourself permission to make mistakes, and then ask for forgiveness when you mess up.
Yeah.
And you will.
That's
for
good.
Sure. Definitely.
I would just add to that, beginning with the end in mind, or continuing with the end in mind. We're in this for the long haul, the long game. So when you do mess up, or when they mess up, keeping that, thinking about who they're going to be as adults. What is the destiny that's in front of them? How can I prepare them for being successful in life? We talk about this a lot. We're not just raising kids, we're raising adults. Like these are going to be men and women. And how can we set them up for being amazing humans, not just obedient kids?
Right.
So, creating a safe place where you can fail, you can fall, you'll receive grace, and walking them through that, because that's really all life is failing forward,
right.
learning as we go, and wanting our home to be a place where we've erased those lines that would attempt to divide. They know this is where they belong, like you said, and no matter what you've done, we're a safe place to run, and we're going to love you in the midst of whatever. So that they can be confident and secure and free to just be who God's called them to be.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's so rewarding, when we go through a difficult thing. That's not the reward, that's the hard work. But it's an amazing experience when you get through that, and then you see that child learn and grow, and begin to bloom and take off.
Yeah.
When others compliment you on how well your children are.
Yeah.
That's awesome. The ultimate compliment.
Hard work pays off, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys again for joining me on the show, and definitely like to have you back again.
Yeah. Sorry about the giggles at the beginning.
It sounds like you need to feed your man.
That's what I was thinking.
It is supper time here, so
right?
I probably should feed him.
No, that's awesome. It's great. Glad we had a laugh. That's awesome. All right, everybody. Well, again, thank you guys, and we'll definitely bring you back on again.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you. All right, guys. Thank you for watching today. I really appreciate you. We had a great time, great discussion on blending families. Not an easy task, but one that certainly can be done. And there's a huge reward for doing that. But thank you again. And I just want to make note, Tuesday, we'll be going live again. I'll be listing the events either this afternoon or tomorrow. We're going to be going live, and we're going to be discussing grief and getting through that. So you're not going to want to miss that. So have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll see you guys on Tuesday.